Imagine a world holding its breath. Every street, every home, every heart is suspended in a moment of uncertainty, as if the very air itself is waiting for something to happen. It is the summer of 1994. The air is thick, not just with heat, but with a tension that seeps into every conversation and every glance exchanged between neighbors. People gather in small groups, whispering about rumors and possibilities, their faces etched with worry. Newspapers print maps of troop movements, their headlines bold and ominous. Radios crackle with warnings, the static only adding to the sense of unease. Each broadcast brings new speculation, new fears. Families huddle together, eyes glued to flickering television screens as soldiers march in perfect unison. The world outside feels distant, as if everyone is waiting for a signal to act. War seems inevitable. A great clash of nations is coming. The machinery of conflict is set in motion. And then, nothing happens. The guns remain silent. Armies quietly pull back, leaving empty fields and abandoned trenches behind. The war that was supposed to define a generation simply evaporates, leaving behind only faded photographs and a collective sigh of relief. Young people, once bracing for the worst, find themselves suddenly free from the shadow of conflict. It becomes a ghost, a phantom conflict that existed only in secret plans, anxious memories, and the sleepless nights of those who prepared for the worst. How do we measure the impact of a bullet never fired? The weight of a war that never happened lingers in the silence, shaping lives in ways that history books rarely record. This is the story of Operation Able Archer 83, the war that almost was, a crisis that unfolded in the shadows and was averted at the very last moment. In November 1983, the world sprinted toward the edge of nuclear annihilation. Cities braced for the unthinkable, as nuclear warning signs became chillingly real. NATO's military exercise was so realistic, so convincing, that Soviet analysts believed it was a cover for a real nuclear strike. The line between simulation and reality blurred dangerously. For 10 days, the planet stood closer to nuclear war than at any time since the Cuban Missile Crisis. Every decision, every miscommunication could have sparked catastrophe. But in the final moments, a handful of individuals on both sides chose restraint over aggression. Their quiet courage and clear thinking pulled the world back from the brink. The decision not to fight became a central chapter in history, reminding us that what is prevented can be as consequential as what occurs. In the silence of the guns, we find the true weight of peace, a lesson written not in blood, but in the lives that continued, unbroken, into the future. The early 1980s were a time of deep fear and uncertainty across Europe. Ordinary people went about their daily lives, but beneath the surface, anxiety simmered. The threat of war, ever present, cast a long shadow over families, communities, and entire nations. The Cold War had entered a dangerous new phase. The period of détente, when tensions had eased, was over. In its place, old hostilities and deep suspicion returned. The Iron Curtain split the continent, dividing not just countries, but families and friends. The superpowers, each armed with world-ending nuclear arsenals, stared each other down across a divided Europe. Soldiers stood guard at borders, missiles waited in their silos, and the threat of annihilation felt closer than ever. In Washington, President Ronald Reagan took a hard line, famously calling the Soviet Union an evil empire. He began a massive military buildup, pouring billions into new weapons and technology, determined to outpace the Soviets at any cost. The deployment of Pershing II missiles in Western Europe sent shockwaves through the Kremlin. These new weapons could reach Moscow in just minutes, leaving almost no time to respond. The Soviets felt cornered, their sense of vulnerability growing. Haunted by memories of surprise attack, the Soviets launched Operation Ryan, a vast intelligence effort to search for any sign of a NATO first strike. Every scrap of information was analyzed, every rumor investigated, as paranoia took hold. Every move, every military exercise was scrutinized and interpreted as a possible threat. This created a dangerous feedback loop of suspicion and fear, with each side convinced the other was preparing to strike first. Each side's defensive actions looked to the other like preparations for war. Tanks rumbled across fields, jets roared overhead, and the line between defense and offense blurred dangerously. The continent was a tinderbox, waiting for a spark. In cities like Berlin, the tension was palpable. Armed guards patrolled the borders, and the threat of conflict was never far from anyone's mind. In the autumn of 1983, that spark arrived. A routine NATO war game, known as Able Archer 83, suddenly became terrifyingly real, pushing the world to the brink of disaster. The world was about to be tested as never before. Leaders on both sides faced choices that could determine the fate of millions, as the shadow of nuclear war loomed larger than ever. The trigger for one of the most dangerous moments of the Cold War was, surprisingly, a military exercise. Able Archer 83. On paper, it was just another NATO war game, part of the annual routine of drills meant to test readiness and coordination. But this one was different, much larger, more realistic, and more comprehensive than anything before. The scale and detail were unprecedented, involving thousands of troops, advanced technology, and high-level officials. The simulation didn't just stop at conventional warfare, it practiced the entire sequence from a hypothetical Soviet attack all the way to the unthinkable, nuclear release. Every step was rehearsed as if it were real. For NATO it was a drill, a test of their systems and protocols. But for Moscow, watching from the shadows, it looked like proof of an imminent attack. The exercise began on November 2, 1983, at a time when tensions between East and West were already dangerously high. The scenario was chilling. A Warsaw-pact invasion, followed by NATO requesting permission to use nuclear weapons. Even heads of state participated, adding to the realism and gravity. New encrypted communications were used for the first time, making it harder for outsiders to interpret what was happening. Coded messages simulated nuclear launch requests, mimicking the exact procedures that would be used in a real crisis. The Soviets intercepted increased radio traffic, observed alerts, and saw bombers loaded with what they believed could be live warheads. To them, these were not just signals, they were warnings. To KGB analysts, this was no longer a game. The intelligence pouring in suggested that a real attack might be imminent. The Kremlin's reaction was swift and severe. They believed Able Archer was a cover for a genuine first strike. Soviet Air Force units in East Germany and Poland were put on high alert, ready to respond at a moment's notice. Nuclear bombers were loaded and crews prepared for takeoff, standing by for the order that everyone hoped would never come. SS-20 missiles were readied in their silos, their warheads capable of reaching targets across Europe in minutes. The world was suddenly one button away from Armageddon, closer to nuclear war than almost anyone realized. Almost no one in the West realized how close they were to disaster. Life went on as usual, with people blissfully unaware of the danger lurking just beneath the surface. The line between simulation and reality had all but vanished, as both sides watched and waited, fingers poised over the triggers. The fate of millions hung in the balance, teetering on the edge of a catastrophe that, for a few terrifying days, seemed all too possible. As Able Archer unfolded, Soviet soldiers in East Germany received chilling orders: arm nuclear bombs, prepare for immediate strike. Pilots wrote farewell letters, convinced they wouldn't return. Across the Soviet bloc, civil defense units mobilized, factories prepared for war, officials moved to bunkers. The Soviet Union braced for the end of the world, while the West went about daily life, unaware. A young conscript hovered over a launch key. A family in Berlin packed a go-bag. A NATO officer ran checklists, oblivious to the real danger. The crisis was hidden, unfolding in secret codes and silent readiness. Armies marched to nowhere. Bombers waited for an order that never came. The world slept, minutes from tragedy. The turning point came not in public, but in the shadows of intelligence. Lieutenant General Leonard Perutz, monitoring Soviet reactions, saw something alarming. The Soviets were on unprecedented alert. Standard procedure was to match their alert, but that could trigger disaster. Perutz made a bold choice. He did nothing. He reasoned that escalation would only confirm Soviet fears. His restraint broke the cycle of paranoia. As Able Archer ended on November 11th, the Soviets watched and waited. No attack came. Bombers stayed grounded. Missiles remained in their silos. Slowly, the Soviet military stood down. The crisis ended not with force, but with a quiet act of courage. The war that seemed certain was averted by a single decision. Sometimes, the most powerful action is choosing not to act. The world exhaled, unaware how close it had come to catastrophe. The history of the war that never was is found in unsent letters and secret plans. A young Soviet pilot wrote a farewell to his family, expecting to die in a war that never came. Civilians prepared in quiet ways, designating safe rooms, stocking supplies, fearing the worst. Secret drills unfolded on both sides. In the US, a shadow government was flown to bunkers, ready to govern after apocalypse. In the Soviet Union, paranoia ran deep. KGB agents tracked blood bank supplies and late-night lice in government buildings, searching for signs of war. These mundane details became indicators of impending disaster. The fear of a surprise attack shaped every action, every plan. The world was on edge, haunted by what might have been. After November 1983, the world did not simply return to normal. The non-war had real consequences. President Reagan, shaken by how close the world came to disaster, shifted his approach. He sought dialogue with the Soviets, toned down rhetoric, and opened new channels of communication. The near miss of Able Archer sparked a thaw that helped end the Cold War. New safeguards were created, hotlines, risk reduction centers, and more cautious military exercises. Both sides learned the danger of miscalculation. The crisis built bridges, not rubble, and laid the foundation for a new security architecture. Europe began to imagine a future beyond perpetual confrontation. The war that never happened became a catalyst for peace. History is often told through battles, but Able Archer 83 reminds us of the power of restraint. The silence of the guns in November echoes through the decades. The choice to pull back, to question assumptions, is one of humanity's greatest strengths. General Perutz's decision was not passive. It was courageous and decisive. Peace is not just the absence of war, but the result of conscious effort and empathy. The legacy of that phantom conflict lives on in treaties, open channels, and as a warning to future leaders. It shows that fear and misunderstanding can be as dangerous as weapons. The greatest victories are often the ones no one hears about. The war that never happened is a story of hope, a reminder that history is shaped by choices, not fate. Sometimes, the most important thing that can happen is nothing at all.